This news story about government waste was in the Sunday Telegraph, and it was about three people taking a $120,000 trip around the world to sell some West Connects. Now, that's a problem, of course, always is a problem, always wasting our money. They don't seem to care. But there's actually a much bigger problem within this story. Now, that much bigger problem is there was two government officials and a banker, and the travel bill was for a Goldman Sachs banker. And according further on in the article, his role was as an advisor, as you can see here. And Goldman Sachs are known around the world as the vampire squid that just suck the life out of everything that they touch. And it's not just rumour and innuendo and a few pissed off people here and there. It's based on recorded instances of Goldman Sachs doing things that were illegal, immoral, and against any measure of ethical business practice. So, why on earth is stupid Australia, a state government here, getting advice from Goldman Sachs? Now, it's bad enough that they've given them $40,000 this banker to go around the world. Okay, that's a problem, but I would be pleased if that banker then just left and didn't give us any advice, because that's where the damage is going to be done. So let's look at how the advice that they gave to another country's government, America, and see how trusted that was.
You don't believe it's relevant to a customer of yours that you are selling a security to, that you are betting against that same security. You just don't think it's relevant and needs to be disclosed. Is that the bottom line?
Yes, and the people who are selling it in our firm wouldn't even know what the firm's position is.
Obviously, this is Lloyd Blankfein, and he's the boss of Goldman Sachs worldwide. And wouldn't be directly Malcolm Turnbull's boss. See, you can't find out any details of this. Like in this story, they just call him a Goldman Sachs banker, but don't give out the name. And you can't find out who these actual Goldman Sachs Australia bosses are who are governing the country through Turnbull. You just can't find out who they are. But this guy's the head guy. And what he's done there is that it's irrelevant that his company was selling stock that they knew were bad. And his defense is that the people selling that stock didn't know what the company's position was. Well, even if they didn't know, they would have known. First of all, that's a lie. They would have known what the company's position was. And secondly, if they were any good at their jobs, they would know that they were bad stock. And they're employees of Goldman Sachs. There's no separation between the firm and the employees. I mean, they are Goldman Sachs. Like when you deal with a company, you go to a tyre place to have your tyres done, and there's a problem. The guy says, oh, the tyre people don't say, oh, we didn't know what he was up to. No, he's your employee. The same as these guys this guy's talking about are their employees. So it doesn't matter whether they knew or not.
You are taking a position against the very security that you are selling, and you are not troubled.
Senator, again...
And you want people to trust you.
Senator, I think people...
Why would
trust
people...
us.
I won't trust you.
Now that's Lloyd looking a bit confused. He can't quite understand what this guy's getting at. What, you wouldn't trust me? And, okay, so these congressional hearings were broadcast worldwide. You could see them, I can find them, and surely someone in the government could find them. So you would take one look at this company, at the head of this company, and realise that if an American congressman would not trust them, that's their track record. So based on their track record, no government around the world, let alone in Australia, should be going anywhere near Goldman Sachs. But for some reason, we're entangled with them. I'll find out a bit about that in a sec.
Synthetic CDOs are. They are instruments that are created so that people can bet on them. It's the la-la land of ledger entries. It's not investment in a business that has a good idea. It's not assisting local governments in building infrastructure.
That's very interesting what Ms. McCaskill said. I'm not sure what synthetic CDOs are, but they're some kind of made-up financial product. Make it like they're a product, like a bottle of tomato sauce or something, or a car or a TV, an actual product, something you could use. Well, they're not. They're just, these financial products are just convoluted documents to try and trick people. And she said they're nothing to do with government infrastructure.
It's gambling. Pure and simple, raw gambling.
Okay, so they've been accused in this congressional hearing of ledger book la la land. And that's exactly what they did to Greece, which is the second example of how they screwed over a government. Now, Greece is in an unrecoverable debt position. And what that is that's when you borrow to pay interest. That means you can never ever pay off the principal, and they won't let them go into debt default. They are keeping their foot on their throats and they're not going to let it up. So Greece is pretty well gone. And Goldman Sachs were instrumental in that. And here's an article how Goldman Sachs profited from the Greek debt crisis. So they were directly responsible for Greece, an entire nation of people now under permanent austerity and ownership by the global banks, including the IMF and the World Bank. And that's what they wanted all along. Goldman Sachs is the operational arm. They call themselves an investment bank. They're also a commercial bank in the States, and Obama granted them that license the day before he gave out those billions and billions in bailouts to commercial banks. That's how well connected they are. They run the show over there, and they're running the show here. The Greek debt crisis offers another illustration of Wall Street's powers of persuasion and predation. That's it. The crisis was exacerbated years ago by a deal with Goldman Sachs engineered by Lloyd Blankfein, and they hid the true extent of Greece's debt through some currency swap deal, and that was the end. And all it did, like political cycles are short, and the people that did those deals thought, okay, I will do this deal. Goldman Sachs were profiting from it, and then I won't be in office and I'll be gone. And that's the problem with these short-term political cycles and parties and everything that we have. There's nothing long-term about them, and they took advantage of that. So here is a government that was brought down by by Goldman Sachs hiding their debt, like doing something deceitful. And here is the New South Wales government with a Goldman Sachs advisor on board giving them advice. And we saw from the previous article with those congressional hearings that they intentionally give bad advice in order to profit. So here is Goldman Sachs once again out and about doing business out in the world, getting into countries. And amid Venezuela default, Goldman receives hunger bond payment. The reason they're called hunger bonds is that Maduro has sent the country broke and people are hungry. They're just leaving because they're just going to starve. Now they can't get rid of him because his government's got all the guns and they don't have guns. So as soon as they protest, they just start shooting them. You never hear about any of this in Western news, especially here in Australia, but that is what's happening in Venezuela, and Goldman Sachs once again are front and centre. So what they did was these bonds, these treasury bonds, that's just what they call when they loan them money. They're buying bonds, but they're actually like just loaning them the money, and then those bonds mean they've got to pay it back. And because Venezuela's got oil, and that's all Goldman Sachs wants. Now, of course, the what the interest rates that they're charging and the value on the oil that they're getting, Goldman Sachs, which is their favourite term, pennies on the dollar, that's what they're getting these bonds for. So the value in oil is probably 10 times the price per barrel, but Maduro just wants the money to hang on to power, so he's willing to sell those bonds at that reduced price for the oil. So they actually start to own their oil. And here it is, despite being in default on most of its debt, because that's where they want everyone to be, Venezuelan state oil company has made a $90 million interest payment to Goldman Sachs. So people are starving. They're actually starving, and Goldman Sachs is over there supporting somebody who's starving a population of people. So they caused Greece to be in an unrecoverable debt position. That one of the Greek finance ministers went up to Merkel to try and go into default, because if you go into default, then all these legal things kick in and you can get out of it, get out of your debt, but they won't let them. Merkel, I don't know what they said to him, maybe invasion or just start assassinating top people who ever tried to do it. I don't know what threat she made, but he went back tail between his legs and said, no, that's it. They own us. We're stuck in this forever and ever and ever. Same as how they want everybody. They won't let you go into debt default. And they won't actually let Venezuela go into debt default legally either. They will just keep taking their oil, and the people will keep starving to death. People are actually dying of hunger in a country full of oil. And that's Goldman Sachs for you. And here is the New South Wales government. I said it a little while ago, the start of this video, showed that article. We're taking advice from Goldman Sachs. We've got the American government saying they don't trust them. We've got Greece in debt default. We've got Venezuela who are starving, giving them money for hunger bonds. And on top of all that, Goldman Sachs have actually been fined by ASIC here in Australia. So on top of that, they've actually been fined for deceitful behaviour. That's on top of their involvement in the FAI HIH collapse. So Goldman Sachs did not contest the matter. Now, okay, that's actually going to be the last fine they're ever going to pay, because they didn't like doing that and they decided they wanted control. And I'll just go over to this. This is an article in the Sydney Morning Herald in regards to ASIC, how they're going to get tough on white-collar crime. Outgoing chairman Greg Metcalf famously described Australia as a paradise for white-collar criminals, saying civil penalties, that's true. Mr. Metcalf is set to be replaced by former Goldman Sachs banker James Shipton. So they covered that base, so they won't be getting any more fines. That's just what they do. They get their people into these institutions and into government. They've got a prime minister. They own our prime minister. They own ASIC, and they own Channel 9. So they're really setting themselves up to really screw over Australia. And they've got their bankers giving advice. And look, I said before, why we can't disentangle ourselves from them. It's because of Turnbull. And when was this article? So he'd be an appointment by, oh, there you go, October 2017. So this Shipton guy, he was just working with Turnbull from, well, Goldman Sachs have got the prime ministership and have now got control of ASIC. So that's why we can't disentangle ourselves from them. And just back to this article, there's Goldman Sachs banker underlined, stung us for $40,000. Like I said before, if that's all we get stung, then we're getting off lightly when it comes to Goldman Sachs, because ordinarily, and I think we're on the same path, the whole nations just collapse and crumble and just become debt slaves to the international bankers who, as I've said before, Goldman Sachs, all their directors and all their high up people, they all interchange between the IMF, World Bank, the International Bank of Settlements, and their operational arm, Goldman Sachs, just so they all know what's going on inside the countries that they're usurping and taking over. And just one other thing, this whole banking inquiry, see, as Goldman Sachs hasn't come up. Now they would be the most corrupt, although they're an investment bank, not a commercial bank in Australia. They would be the most corrupt bank in all of it. And I've shown with that FII, that was the biggest collapse in Australia's corporate history, and Goldman Sachs had to pay $500 million settlement. So they are the biggest criminals banking organisation in Australia, and they're getting our banks, the Australian-owned banks or shareholder-owned banks, for things like not doing right insurance, bad advice, so stuff they shouldn't be doing. But Goldman Sachs is going to get off scot-free. So watch, I think they're softening up our banks for a takeover by Citigroup. That'll be announced. Probably Goldman Sachs will swallow up one of them. And I think we're just ripe for the picking now. They've lowered the price of the shares, and watch for some big international banking takeovers. And Turnbull's there. They've got to do it pretty quick while he's there, and they've got the ASIC guy shipped in there. And so that's what I think is going to happen next. But that'll be a video. I'll do a video on that down the track as more information becomes available. All right, that's it.